Hey there, friends. Welcome back. Today I've got lots of things to chat with you about. My knitting. I've been doing some crocheting, what I've been reading, what I've been watching. So grab a cup of something and let's dive in. All right, so let's start with finished objects. I only have one this week. I thought for sure I would have more, but I only have one, and that is my Aquarium socks. I have not woven in the ends. I have a pile of things that I need to weave in the ends. I had one of these done, and I think I had one of these started. Let's just look back in my notes. I didn't write down what I was working on. Well, this week, or in the past 2 weeks, I finished this pair of socks. I definitely had one finished because it was on display in the mobile trailer. There might be a few micro sock sets of this available, but these are done. I did, though, the other day find a drop stitch in one of them, so I'll need to tack that down when I weave in my ends. I have a whole pile of things that I need to weave ends in on, so that'll be one thing. But that's the only thing I finished. I thought for sure I would finish my Traveler's Cowl in the Moon Goddess colorway. I haven't even touched it. I started in on a ton of other things. So let's get into what have I been working on the last couple of weeks. So one of the things that I had is I had one sock on display for my Enchanting colorway, and I needed a basic project for something like going to a doctor's appointment or something. So I did start a second one, and as you can see, I'm almost finished getting through the leg. I'm not quite there, maybe another couple of rounds, and I should be ready to start my heel. Yeah. So really decent progress on that. So that's one sock. Like pretty much all of my socks, it's vanilla. I use a US 1 2.25 needle. I cast on 64 stitches. I do 1 inch of a 2x2 rib, and then from cuff to where I want to start my heel, I do 7 inches. Then I do a slip stitch heel or heel flap, turn my heel, and then from turning my heel to where I need to start my toe decreases, because of my shoe size, I do 7¼ inches, and then I start my toe decreases. So that is one pair of socks. I've got a few going right now, but like I said, I've been, as a teacher, I kind of save all of my annual visits for the summertime, so I don't have to take time off for that kind of stuff. So I've kind of hit that time frame where, you're going to get a mammogram, you're going to see your OBGYN, you're going to see your primary care physician, taking my husband for, lab work for his doctors when he's in town. So just all those like random doctor's offices, I've needed quite a few just simple projects to have on hand. I have also been working on my She Put 'em on the Map socks. Again, this is the first one that was done. It's been on the trailer. I am now ready to do the other one. Same vanilla pattern that I do for all of my socks. And a couple weeks ago when I talked to you, I was here. You might be able to tell that this is a little taco. I believe it is from Charmed and Dangerous. I could be wrong, but it's a cute little taco. So I've started my heel flap. I'm about halfway through. So I know for a fact I was waiting on a mammogram, and when I think, no, I was working on this one because I was also reading on my Kindle and knitting at the same time, which of course always draws a fair amount of attention when you're sitting in a busy waiting room. You really look, I think people look at me like, oh my gosh, she's some kind of sorceress. Because I've been able to work on multiple projects at the same time. So that's my She Put 'Em on the Map colorway and the Enchanting colorway. And then I have started in a sock week with Nitty Natty. So last week I talked about I was going to dye a colorway for the Ready or Not book, and I did indeed do that. So it is live on the website on Talbot sock sets, and so I have been making steady progress. So for my first sock, I got through my cuff, I've done my leg, and I've done my heel flap and turned my heel. For the second one, I've done the same thing, but I've actually started my foot. And so then once I can get down to the toe decreases and I switch to my contrasting color, then I can flip back with my main color to this sock. Today is Thursday, so we started on Sunday, the 20th, and so I got both my cuffs done on Sunday, and then the goal was to get one leg done on Monday, one leg done on Tuesday, get my heels done on Wednesday, and then get this foot done today on Thursday, get this foot done on Friday, and then that gives me Saturday to do a toe and then Sunday to do a toe because it is an 8-day challenge. The challenge is just to get one sock knitted, so I'm well on my way with this one, but I had a personal challenge to get them both done, so we'll see. This week I haven't been really doing much of anything except knitting on these, and it's only because I have just not spent a ton of time crafting. I've been a little distracted at times, so this is in a new project bag by Robin's Nest Knits. And so this is, as you can see, it has a canvas bottom, and then it has little donut floaties and unicorn and flamingo floaties. So very summery. And so that's what I've been working on primarily this week. These should probably be finished by the time we sit down and chat again. So those are the 3 socks that I've been working on. Again, 2 of those pairs of socks, I had 1 sock done. I'm just trying to finish up the mate and kind of clear some things up out of my whips. I'm really trying to clear up some needles this summer, and when you've got a bunch of single socks because they've been display samples, it's just kind of nice to get the other ones done, and then I can still put them up in the trailer this fall, or some of them will just go straight into my personal sock drawer at some point. And then the other 2 things that I've started is I started crocheting the squares for my Geddy tee and the Fleetwood sweater. And so I talked about it in my summer knitting plans video, and I talked about how I had 4 colorways that were inspired by my 4 dogs. And so I really wanted to use them all in the same project. And I was really kind of torn between, do I do them in the Fleetwood sweater, which is the sweater that I fell in love with first by Tanis Lavelli of Tannis Fiber Arts. And that sweater, even though you do the granny squares in DK, in order to get gauge to kind of match, you then do the sweater in worsted. And I was really kind of torn with the Mid-Atlantic region where I live here in the United States. We don't get a ton of time where worsted weight is really a great weight of a sweater. Like DK is kind of the limit of getting the most wear out of it. And then I got to thinking that, well, maybe the crochet squares would add a little bit of ventilation. I don't know. And then I also was torn with doing the Geddy tee, which is by the same designer, but it's short sleeves, it is DK, but then I was like, ugh, I won't get a lot of wear out of it if I stick to just wool. So what I did do is I did the square for all of them. Now, this is the stack for my Fleetwood sweater. I have not gone back and woven in my ends. I am not the type of crocheter who crochets my ends in at the same time. So what I opted to do, I do a magic circle, and then do I have anything that I can, yeah, this, maybe I can use this as a backdrop. So I started with a magic circle, and then in the middle, I started with Legends colorway because it's the lightest of the four. And then I proceeded to move to the pink, which is Petals colorway. Then Lyrics is the one that has that turquoise and golds and pinks. And then the purplish one is Paisley. And then I needed a couple more rounds for the Geddy tee. So I did another round of Legends. And 5 rounds is all I need for the Fleetwood sweater. But technically for the Geddy tee, I needed 6 rounds. So if I stayed in sequence, that meant I was returning back to the pink. And when I did that, it didn't look as fluid anymore. Like another round of pink looked harsh to me. Then I pulled out my measuring tape and started measuring, and my square was already too big, and I didn't want to drop down a hook size. I was pretty happy with my squares. These are unblocked. I haven't blocked these. So 5 rounds for my Geddy tee was meeting, or was right around gauge before blocking. So what I opted to do was stick with the 5 rounds, like take that second pink off and stick with it looking like this. And then what that meant is that on each of my shoulders, when I went to pick up across these stitches, I was going to be 4 stitches off over here and 4 stitches off over here. So I had to do a little bit of fudging to make it work stitch count wise in the round, but it was something that I was willing to do because I preferred the look of the squares like this versus adding that pink again and really detracting from the vibe of the square. For my Geddy tee, I have opted to use this as my main color. This is what I call my Shell Yeah colorway, and it does call for DK, but I chose to use my cotton wool fingering instead. It's 50% wool, 50% cotton, and I'm holding it double, which will get me the DK. I could have opted to hold the cotton wool DK by itself in the same colorway, but I decided to hold it in fingering double because even though it just has a slightly different texture to it, like it has more give because we've got a little bit more movement in the 2 yarns. So the other thing is by carrying it double, I don't have to worry about any kind of helical knitting or anything because the 2 skeins are already doing their magic and kind of blending everything. So I have made a ton of progress on this. So you will see I did my 4 squares and oops, we're caught. I did my 4 squares, and then you move on to picking up the back. You work through that, then you pick up one side, and work that for so long, and then pick up the other side and do that. So when we look at this, I've connected in the round end. I've done a few inches. I'm really happy with the way this is looking. Like, I'm just going to hold it down like this. Like, I'm really happy with the way the 2 skeins are playing really nicely throughout. I think it's easier to see on the back. I'm really happy how holding it double really lets that color flow. I don't feel like there's a ton of pooling. I'm really pleased with the way this color really accentuates the color in my squares. I was a little bit worried because it is summertime, so I look a little pinker, or my complexion is darker than it normally is when I would typically be wearing this color. But so I was worried about this color just because it's not the best color to wear up around my face. Like, it doesn't do anything for my complexion. So I was a little worried because before, these aren't terribly bright. Like, when you look at the picture from the designer, hers are really bright, bold, primary Crayola-like colors. And because I used speckles, mine are not quite as bold, but I love the way that they look. And honestly, I'm really happy with the way this neutral colorway is just kind of accentuating the colors in the squares and not detracting from them. I'm also really happy that I decided to make all my squares the same, so that it just has, to me, for this one anyway, it just has a bit more of a polished look, where the designer, I think hers were like different, and I don't love that look. So I'm pretty excited. I think I don't have very much left in, hold on, it's wrapped around I don't have very much left in the 2 cakes that I'm using. So once I've knitted the body around in what's left of these 2 cakes, I will then switch to the new cakes, and I will go back and do my arms. I'll do the ribbed V-neck, and then whatever I have left over, I will finish up the body and do that split hem ribbing. But this is what I have spent the majority of my time doing. It started with doing the 4 squares, and then once I got the 4 squares done, I went, if I don't do those 9 squares for the Fleetwood, I'm not confident that I'm going to want to return to my crochet hook and do them. So I went ahead and cranked them out. I essentially, did all my individuals. Then for these 9, I just worked every single round in tandem, so that these took me a couple of days, but it is the type of thing where these were really little. I did weave in the ends on these before I started working on this sweater, because it did make it a lot easier to pick up those stitches. And again, I had to do some fudging because I didn't do that extra round. It meant I came up short. And you're doing short row shaping after this anyway. So I don't think it really mattered that I was throwing in some extra stitches along the way. I am knitting these on a US 5, which is a 4mm needle. I have my little frogs I think these are from my weekly sock advent from Frog at Yarns, hence why they're frogs. So that is what I have spent the majority of the last couple of weeks working on. This project primarily lives in it's not in it right now, but my redesign bag. I have the redesign 39 bag. I actually really kind of love this because I can open it on the tray table in front of me. My little basket fits in it, so that if I want to take that somewhere with me, or I want to set that up, but I just want this in front of me, like if I'm in bed, I don't necessarily want that big bag in my lap. So my basket, because I sit 2 balls of yarn in it when I'm knitting in tandem like that. So I'm really loving this bag. It's a great bag to take on the go with me. If I know I'm going to be sitting somewhere and have place to open it up. I don't know that I would take it to the doctor's office with me. I usually take my backpack, or I stick, a project bag down in my pocketbook or my backpack and take that with me. So as for my Fleetwood sweater, I will weave in the ends before I start these. And then I did go ahead and dye up the colorway that I'm going to use for the main color. So originally I thought, I'll just use the same color on the big one. And I really decided against that. I really liked this colorway as the heel, toes, and cuffs on my Ready or Not sock set. And originally I thought I was going to go with my Peer Pressure colorway, which is a bright pink. And then I just really didn't like it. It just was a bit too harsh. So I think that this is going to be the color that I use. I just think it'll be fun. It won't take away from, there's enough blue in to pull. I think this blue will help bring out the blue that's in Legends colorway. It definitely kind of syncs up a little bit with Lyrics colorway. So I have a feeling the only thing that's holding me back, honestly, from casting on was this is sock week. So my sock week socks have been getting the most love this week. And then is the ends. Weaving in the ends for 4 squares it took me I want to say a couple of hours one evening. Obviously I was distracted by the television or distracted by my phone, whatever. But in this case, I've got 9 of these suckers. So that's a bit more in regard to weaving in ends. But I know that I need to do that first because you need to kind of join as you go, crochet with the squares, and then there's this sequence of picking up so that you can actually knit the project. So before I can knit these together, I need to get my squares woven in, which may take me a day, like if I just took a weekend day and did it, or maybe a couple evenings during the week. I only have a couple more weeks until I go back to school. I have been back out in the dye studio. Obviously, I dyed this for myself. I dyed up the sock sets. I've been tackling filling up some colorways that have been selling, and I need to restock the truck. And then I closed Christmas holiday advents on Monday. So I have a lot of that yarn already. I just need to order a few more things, and then that will get started probably this weekend. And then right now I also have Halloween advents that are open. So those will start to get tackled probably next month as well. So back in the dye studio, I'm trying to stick to first thing in the morning. I'd much prefer a slower start to my morning, like getting up, taking the dogs out, feeding them, sitting down and enjoying my coffee while I read the news, or turn a show on that I missed the night before. Like, I don't stay up to watch The Gilded Age at 9 o'clock on Sunday nights. I'm usually going to bed around 9 o'clock so that I can read. So like on Monday mornings, I'm watching The Gilded Age. So it's stuff like that. But it has been so dreadfully hot. We did get past that one heat wave, and it was fine because Paisley was still little, and as an excuse to stay out of the dye studio because she's just so little. And I certainly don't want to take her out there with me. Now that she's a little bit bigger, she's housebroken. I put her in a crate when I go out there, just like I do the rest. But I don't feel as bad leaving her in here, in her crate for any length of time. Because if I go out there and make a day of it, I'm out there for like 3 hours. So she's actually now at an age where she can hold her bladder for that long. And they say however many months, an hour for however many months they are plus one. So she's now 13 weeks old. So she can be alone for 4 hours, 4.5 really by this point. So back in the dye studio, I only have a couple more weeks till I go back to work, so that will slow me down. So I definitely want to finish my sock week socks, weave in ends, and then get the Fleetwood started, because once I get it started, then it's just a matter of picking things up. I like to go around and around, or I guess back and forth. So I need to get this project to that point so that it's easier for me to pick up. And that's really all that I've worked on the last couple of weeks. So as for what I've been watching, I'd kind of taken a hiatus from all like the reality television that I watch on Peacock or, Bravo. And I think I was just kind of tired of the drama, tired of the chaos. At the end of the school year, my life was pretty chaotic with just one particular case that I was having to deal with that kind of got escalated. And then a puppy came in, and I just couldn't deal with all that chaos. But now that things have kind of slowed down and I'm really kind of in the groove of my making, and I've kind of run out of other things to watch. I have returned to Peacock, and the new season of The Real Housewives of Orange County started, so I'm here for that. That's the original Housewives franchise. I didn't watch any of The Valley. I've kind of gotten sucked into that. So I've kind of returned to watching what I call trash television. And that's okay. I'm sure I'll tire of it again. But for right now, I'm all in. I'm still watching The Gilded Age. I've been sucked into, what is it on Peacock? The McPhee Dynasty. Think Yellowstone, but reality TV. It's kind of crazy. Just crazy. And so I'm not spending a ton of time watching television, and a lot of times it's background noise. I find like for a lot of that stuff, you don't have to be watching it. This week, I did return back to the movies. Today is Thursday, so on Tuesday, I did go back to the movies. I had such a great time when I went and saw Jurassic Park a couple weeks ago at my little local small theater. And I went to go see the new Superman movie. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is not like Jurassic Park where I went back and watched all the previous movies. I didn't care. I can't say I'm a huge DC Comics. I'm much more of a Marvel fan than I am a DC Comics. But I wanted to see what the whole dog thing was about in this Superman movie, because my husband was like, oh, critics and reviewers and true fans, they're saying it's so disappointing. I hope you're not disappointed. And I basically was like, well, I went for the dog, and the dog did not disappoint. The dog had a much bigger storyline than I anticipated. I can't say that I got everything in the movie. Like, I'm sure there were a few things that went right on over my head. There were characters that I was like, who is this? I think I'm supposed to know who that is, but I don't know who that is, but okay. And, but I had a good time. I have discovered that I kind of enjoy just going to the movies by myself. I go on a discount ticket day, so it's less than $9 for me to go sit in a small theater with recliner seats. I usually go middle of the day, so it's just me and a couple handfuls of people my age or older. There's very rarely a younger person in there. Right now, because school's out, I have that luxury to be able to go in the middle of the day with all these, I guess we'll call them seniors. Most of them are old enough to probably be my parents. But that means that it's relatively quiet. There's not really any kind of distractions. There's not like teenagers playing with their phones, that kind of thing. You reserve your seat. So I always reserve the same seat so that if I need to kind of dash out to the hall really quick to look at my knitting, because I take a sock, one of my sock week socks, I literally knit half of the leg during that Superman movie. And so it's a really good time for me, and I enjoyed it. As for what I've been reading, I did in the last 2 weeks finish, it looks like 7 books, and the first one I finished was The Perfect Couple by Elin Hilderbrand. And this is the book that the Netflix show was based on. And that's the only reason I read this book, is because I thoroughly enjoyed the show. And so I was curious, what was the book like? And I will say, normally I like to read the book first before I see something. I don't think I made that connection between book and show prior to watching the show. In this case, I loved the show more than I loved the book. I gave this book 3 stars. I think Netflix did it better. They made it more kind of suspenseful or thrillery for me. Others may not feel that way, and I might feel differently had I not seen the show first. It's the afternoon, so I'm losing lighting, so I keep kind of adjusting my lighting. So if the lighting on the screen is going a little wacky, that's why. The next book I read, I listened to The Perfect Couple. I also listened to The Crash by Freida McFadden, and if you saw my video last week, I listened to her book, The Tenant, and it didn't do it for me. And I'll be honest, The Crash by Freida McFadden didn't do it for me either. I know typically Freida McFadden books for me are really potato chippy. I know there's kind of a controversy around her. She whips out books really quickly. And I have seen online where some people kind of allude to the fact that, not that she plagiarizes, but like she kind of cherry picks storylines and kind of redoes what other authors have done. I don't know what kind of legitimacy there is to that, but I do find her stories short and rather potato chippy. This was a 3-star read for me. This is one of those stories that I saw the twists coming, and I just had a little more difficulty engaging with it because I felt like she wasn't giving me anything suspenseful or thrillery. I felt like I was just kind of reading through all of her plot twists. I then read or listened to The Inheritance by Trisha Sakhlecha. I don't know that I said that right. This was a 3-star listen for me. I may have felt differently about this book. It's supposed to be a thriller. I really wanted to love this. And there were parts of it that I did enjoy, but it was just a little too slow for me. It was not a bad story. It does take place in India, so we're not talking about like American inheritance. We're talking about Indian inheritance. So that really intrigued me. I had a really solid interest in that, but it moved too slowly for me. That's the only reason that it didn't get a higher reading. It's not a bad book. I just prefer a much faster pace. Then I moved on to The Favorites by Layne Fargo. And this is a book that I read and I also listened to. And I will tell you, this was a 5-star read for me. I did not anticipate liking this book as much as I did. This is about ice dancers and competitive ice dancers, like Olympic athletes. But this is as dramatic as like ice skating in the 80s and 90s, like the whole Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding thing. Like it's that kind of crazy drama. And I will tell you that a lot of people were saying, if you're going to read this book, audio is the way to go. And I am here to reiterate that. Because you're reading sequences that involve like online bloggers and stuff, I found the audio of this so much more exciting. I will say the first couple of chapters, it took me a while to kind of get into the characters. I was like, I don't know if this is going to be worth all the hype. I'm not really into competitive, I'm not really into the Olympics. So am I really going to enjoy this? I don't know anything about ice dancing. I don't really even know anything about competitive ice skating. But once you get kind of the characters ingrained in your head and you really understand what's going on, this is a trip and a half. There is plenty of drama. If you like that, what I call trash television, that Bravo stuff, you are going to love this book. And I would wholeheartedly say, give it a listen. This was a fantastic read, particularly in audio. Then I moved on to The Wedding People. And this is another book that people have totally hyped up. Again, this is another one that I tag teamed between the audio and reading it. I think you can go either way with this one, but this was a really great book where we are following a character who goes to this resort location and she's basically planning on committing suicide, and everyone else there is there for this wedding, and she ends up getting kind of roped in with the bride, and it's kind of that journey that they go through. This was a really great read. I loved this one, and quite honestly, this cover does not do the story any justice, I don't think. I'm not in love with this cover, and I think that's what took me I hate to say it, but that's what took me so long to really pick up this book. And I was like, oh, I'll wait for the audio to come in. And then once the audio came in from the library, I quickly wanted to bounce back and forth between the two. And then from there, I moved on to A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. If you're unfamiliar with this author, she is very much known for her magical realism. This was a 4-star read for me. This is the story of a young woman who is a twin, and her twin brother has died, and she has to return to the town that she left him in and kind of figure out how he ended up dying, because he died like out in the forest. He was like a scientist. And so it's not a very big book. Again, she's always got a little bit of magical realism in her stories. It just kind of elevates the story ever so slightly. It's never anything that seems really far-fetched. So this was a 4-star read for me. She's kind of hit or miss occasionally, but I really loved this one. And if you hold on a second, Paisley's kind of unhappy. So I'll talk about the last book and give you a Paisley update, but let me just go. The next book I read was Happy Wife by Meredith, Lavender, and Kendall Shores. I listened to this one. It was a 5-star read for me. I loved everything about this book. It is fast-paced. It is a thriller. You're getting multiple points of view. Really well done. I understand why it was a book club pick for, I think, Jenna Bush Hager. Yeah. And those are the 7 books that I finished in the last couple of weeks. I'm almost finished one that I am listening to now. And so for those of you who have not met her, here's Miss Paisley. We are, look at that belly. She just had dinner, so she's kind of fat and happy right now. Although she took a little nappy nap, and then she just couldn't wait for me to finish. She's 13 and a half weeks old now, and she is doing great. She is housebroken, and she's a mama's girl. Dad is fun dad. She is quite the little darling. She's quite smart. She figured out recently, I put a baby gate across our family room. When I don't, because if that's where I am, and my husband's not home or he's out of town, then that's where I want the dogs, is with me. And I had the baby gate up, and I ran up to the kitchen, and I needed to get something, and she was not happy that she couldn't follow me. I always just leaned the baby gate up, and she was learning how to kind of like try and skirt around it, but in the process she was knocking it down. So then I figured out, like, if I put a case of water there, then she couldn't skirt around it and knock it down. Well, she's very smart, because she then figured out that she can sort of fit through the banister of the stairs. So I'll try and input a picture of that here. So she's very clever. She's a lot like Lyric in that regard, where if she can't get her way, she will obviously try and you can just see the gears working. Like, how can I ultimately get what I want, even though I can't get it the way I've always gotten it. So it should be interesting in a couple weeks to go back to work. I do work from home, yeah, but it will be interesting to get her accustomed to a new schedule, a new routine, because right now when she says, hey, I have to go outside and go to the bathroom, I can jump up and do that. That's not quite as easy to do when they're in the middle of teaching a class. So she will have to get used to the new schedule. Yeah. As you can see, she is pretty mellow, pretty calm right now. Like I said, she just ate a little bit ago, so she's a little bit tired, I think, but she didn't want to be in her crate, I guess. So if you've made it this far, I would love to hear, what are you knitting on during these hot days here this summer? Like, what have you been working on? Are you working on little projects like socks? Are you working on bigger projects and starting sweaters, or finishing up summer teas? And until next time, friends, happy knitting, happy reading.